Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Hello everyone, welcome to Road to Cheltenham and thank you for joining us in this happy new year. Ruby Walsh and I are looking forward to this packed show. There's so much action to deal with over Christmas. We've had to pack it into two shows. So essentially it's the established hurdlers and chasers in this show and the novices next week. That seems the only way we can do it, really.
That's the way you wanted to do it, so that's the way we're doing it.
Did you want to do it the other way around?
Well, I'd have put in Ile France anyway.
Yeah, well, we are going to talk about it. Now, funny enough, that is where we're going to start. So we're going to start with the established chasers, but we're going to use Ile Français to measure them. Let's dispel this myth, shall we, about the King George being strongly run.
It was strongly run for two fences actually. So you watch them line up and go, and Frodon, who makes the running in the King George on the left of your screen, is going to get to the first fence. Not quite a second and a half, about a second and 44 in front of Ile France. But you can see that they've gone quick down to the first. But when Frodon gets there, he jumps to first. Ile France is going to take off. That's 1.44 seconds behind them. When they get to the second, that gap has dropped a little bit. It's just over a second. At the second fence, it's 1.08 or thereabouts. But by the time they get around the bend and get to the third fence, it's dropped back to 0.33, so there's very little difference by the time we get to the third fence about the pace. Bryony Frost has got in front and she slowed it down, but what Bryony continues to do then is slow this race down. So at the third fence, it's 0.33 of a difference. Ile France, when he's in mid-air, is just marginally behind Frodon, but it's from the third fence to the last fence on the first circuit. That's a huge difference, and it's going to see it now in a second. I work it out at a difference of about 3.5 seconds to the Novice Chase. The King George race slows right down from the time they jump this fence until they get to the last fence on the first circuit. They've pulled it right up. Nico de Bonville is aware of that because he gets up beside Bryony on Shishkin to try and force the issue on, and from there on they never get back in front. This is a 12 fence, there's a second and a half in the difference. They get to the last in the back straight, and the Novice Chase has extended that to over 2 seconds. So the myth that they went too hard too soon, the King George doesn't tie up. And from there on, they close a little bit to the third last. It's 1.2 seconds, or 2.6 even, and then they get further behind. And by the time they get to the last, they're 3.31 seconds behind, and they end up finishing 4 and whatever it is behind. So no, I don't think the King George was too strongly run. I don't think they went too quick too soon. I just think plenty of them underperformed.
Yeah, and the key thing we were saying, if we wind back to pre the King George, we thought there's no way that Frodon will be able to control this race in the way that he had done previously. And what does it say about the horses that have been involved in the finish here, that he was able for such a long way?
Well, it probably says as much about Allaho as any of the others, because he was able to smash Ryanair's apart, yet he couldn't load his King George apart. So that'd be the big question mark for him. Now here is the King George, so lined up again. Shishkin down the inside, Nico had to roust him along. Bryony gets wide and across like she has done a couple of King Georges previously. Hewick, your eventual winner, he's bang up there going to the first fence, has to switch outside Allaho on the approach to it, but that was as close as he gets to the front until he gets to the business part of the race. Next fence, the real whacker was already flat to the boards away from the second. When they face down into the back straight, the sixth fence, you're going to see Brave Man's Game in the orange. He makes an uncharacteristic mistake here, stands back, doesn't quite get there, lands on it, and Hewick has already been niggled along at the back of the field. Now Nico realised fairly quickly that Bryony was going a fraction slow, so he gets up there and Shishkin to try and push him forward. But when they get away from this fence, Gavin Sheehan can't even keep up. Hewick is flat to the board. It's going to give him a reminder. And by the time they get to the 15th, it looks a 3-horse race. I mean, it's the 3 in front. Now for me, Shishkin, being as idle as he's gone, was only doing enough in front. Jumps the third last well, and he looks to have the other two held. Allaho's flat to the boards. Brave Man's Game can't get any closer. Second last, when he lands, Whitty's near 4, he knocks his off 4 and trips himself and unseats Nico. Nearly brings down Brave Man's Game, but they slow down now, Allaho and Brave Man's Game, and that allows Hewick to catch up. They just completely slow, and Hewick is slowing as well, but they just slow quicker than Hewick does, and Perseverance wins out and he gets to the line in front. Great result for the Shark, for Gavin Sheehan, for the horse, but I think the second and the third underperformed, and I do think Shishkin was going to win.
Yeah, okay, so without what unfortunately happened to Shishkin, and he's ended up being quite sore as a result of that, you think he'd have won?
I think he was only doing enough.
Who would have finished second? Brave Man's Game or Hewick? Hewick.
Yeah, I think Hewick was still got by Brave Man's Game.
Okay, because Haybane's game was checked, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was, but I don't think that was the brave man's game that won the King George. I don't think he's been the same horse this season. And to me, he didn't show any spark. Harry Cobden never looked like he was thinking he was going to win the race. He was even struggling to hold Paul Townend in the pocket down the backstraight.
I agree. And as you've pointed out right at the start, I mean, Il est Francais' time performance, which we will talk about in great detail next week, just blew them away.
It does, and that doesn't mean Il est Francais would have won the King George. Times are only, you have to run in the race to win the race. But I think it's more reflective of the King George than Il est France. I don't think that was I think too many horses underperformed.
Let's see what you thought. We'll start with Steve, shall we, at Cabby'smate. Now, he said that he consistently undervalued Hewick after the King George. He's run out of excuses. He's a genuine Grade 1 horse. Now, Shark Hanlon has said in the Racing Post this morning that he will only run in the Gold Cup if conditions don't come up to testing, with the Grand National as a viable alternative. There's a number of performances from Hewick that says that he's a top-class horse. But I think he needs things to absolutely fall right. As you say, he's got to actually win a race, and he's put up lots of his performance bossing lesser horses. I undervalue him. Is that what the last tweet said? Tweet said? I didn't think he had the pace to win the Galway Plate. He did. I didn't think he carried the weight to win the Kerry National. He was going to. He definitely ran better than I thought he would in the Gold Cup. I think he was beaten when he fell. And he's won a King George. So he is a Grade 1 horse. He's won a King George, and he's gone and done it. Would he win a Gold Cup? I'm not so sure, but on quick ground, he'd run a good race. I suppose he is running better than most of the horses from last year's Gold Cup field, bar from maybe, well, obviously Galopin de Champs, and also arguably Royal Pagaille until he had his setback.
Yeah, until he had a setback. And look, you're looking at last year's novices, what's coming forward. Hard to say the real whacker as Braun, Jerry Calam, I don't think performed to his best in Leopardstown, so he's. I'm not saying he'd beat Galopin de Champs, but he definitely could run better in the Gold Cup than he did at Leopardstown. So, look, Hewick could be a player. And look, if you only have one or two to beat, who knows what can happen?
Yeah.
It's a horse race at the end of the day, but I wouldn't be backing him right now anyway.
OK, there's some thoughts here on Allaho as well. It's a conversation between Dave Deer and Richard Williams. Dave is of the view that Stage Star and Allaho have made the Ryanair a puzzle, and that maybe Edwardstone is the answer to it. And Richard Williams has been calculating, got his mental calculator out, and takes a positive view of Allaho's run in the King George. Now, lots of people do. Like you, I don't. I'm not so sure. I think when you look back at him in Ryanair Chases in 21 and 2, 21 with Rachel Blackmore, 22 with Paul Townend, it was how he was able to show the pace to dominate the race early. Here they are going to the fourth fence. That's Min just behind him. Look how far clear they are, the rest of the field. Mellon is landing up on the outside in 5th place. You go to the following year, not Elixir the Nuts, the other horse of Warner's is in 2nd place. But you look at the spread he has on the field again. He was able to dominate 2.5 mile chases and blow them apart, yet he couldn't do that in the King George, and he does stay. Here he is beating Clandazobo, Kenboy and Alboon Photo at Punchestown. Doesn't fly the last, but again he dominated this race and went in the front. I think when you look at the sections of the King George, I was disappointed that he couldn't dominate. Yeah. So was I. I think the Allaho that we've just seen there would have bossed that King George, and the idea that he doesn't stay 3 miles where we've just seen Punchestown. That was a deep field at the time of Stone. It was a very deep field, and after his first Ryanair, Willie went back to 2 miles with him, it didn't work. After his second Ryanair, he went up to 3 miles with him, it did work, but I don't think he showed the spark in the King George that he's shown to win a couple of Ryanairs. Now, we must recognise Frodon, of course, who is the 2020 King George winner, the 2019 winner of the Ryanair, and we can see those shots. Bryony Frost coming in with Paul Nicholls there. He also won the Dan Royal Champion Chase in 2021. Paul Voigt, his owner, has taken the decision to retire him, calling him the People's Horse, 11 years of age, and obviously, he is so associated with the career of Bryony Frost, and he's retiring to her place alongside her first Grade 1 winner, Black Corton. So Frodon, who's been part of the fabric of the jump season, has been retired, and we'll wish him, of course, a happy retirement. Allaho, let's talk about... Sorry, not Allaho, Shishkin. Let's talk about Shishkin. He ducked the parade beforehand, as did Brave Man's Game, and neither you or I like that, the lack of level playing field, the not serving the crowd properly.
Yeah, but that's a test too. And how a horse handles the preliminaries is a test of them as well. So look, I think that if there's the two of them below at the start while the others are parading in front of the stand, I think if they're going to the start, the others should be sent to the start. I just think it should be level playing field. Here's the start, and you know, Shishkin got a flyer, and Nico had to roust him along. But once he was moving and going forward, it was always going to be the best opportunity for him to start, and he does. And at times in the race, you were thinking, oh, is he going to get himself out of that pocket he was in going to the first? But he did. He got up there, and he was always pretty much in front from halfway. But the start's always going to be a question mark with him.
I think so. I mean, things fell very kindly for him down at the start, didn't they? I mean, it was one continuous movement to come onto the track and start. Nobody checked him or got in his way. There was no full start. Nothing went wrong, and off he went sweetly. Everyone
was sporting.
Yeah, weren't they? Do you think it'll be the same in the Gold Cup?
Who knows? Everyone was sporting in the King George, though.
They were, weren't they? Just the way that he had to be nudged and reminded. By the way, there's a Grade 1 chase going on here, Shishkin. Whilst I definitely agree he would have won, he's obviously got the talent. I just wonder what happens next time.
Will everyone be so sporting?
I knew he was going to say that. Right, OK, let's move on to the Savills Chase, shall we? And this was the return of Galopin Des Champs, and how magnificent was he?
He was really, really good. Change of tactics. Obviously, Paul bounced him out. Conflator went down the inside. Jerry Calam appreciated wide left. At Plutar down the inside was Churchstone Warrior. Gaia Maximus and Capadano got into a good rhythm. Even at the third fence here, he puts down on Paul Townend. And you're thinking, oh no, I was watching this live thinking, is he going or not going now? Jack Kennedy switched from outside him to inside him, going to the fourth fence, and again Galopin put down. I'm thinking, come on horse, get yourself off the ground, show us something. But he does here, jumped that well. I am Maximus, he missed. That was the story of his race, and away from the stands. Appreciated makes a mistake here. This fence just hits Sean O'Keefe up the rear end and he puts him over his ears. But first fence in the back straight, look at the difference in Galopin Des Champs to Jerry Calam. There's a length or length and a half just right there. Pings the fourth last and going to the last ditch again. Galopin Des Champs to Jerry Calam. At Plutar is beaten at the back. I am Maximus is trying to get into it. Appreciated travel really well for my money across to the second last, but Galopin pings that. Appreciated misses it, and from here it's all over. Jerry Calam is flat to the boards. He can't get any closer. Paul swings wide off the bend, and this horse starts to quicken. Well, not quicken. Everything else is slowing down, and he just doesn't. And he keeps up that relentless gallop, goes to the last fence, jumps it really well. Conflated gets rid of Sam Ewing, but spots his stride, has the energy to ping it, and all the way to the winning post. I thought it was a really, really good performance. Now, I think Capadano getting so close to Jerry Calam probably, to me, suggests maybe Jerry didn't run up to his best. Why? I'm not sure. He was quite fresh in the parading beforehand, which I hadn't noticed about him before, but there was only one winner, and even if you can bring 8, 9, 10 pounds of improvement into Jerry Calam, it still only gets you halfway at the Galopin Des Champs.
Yeah, there's lots of aspects to this. I definitely agree. You've pointed out the 11th and 3 out, the one by one difference between the way that Galopin Des Champs jumps and the way that Jerry Calam jumps. We highlighted this from the very first show of this series. Galopin Des Champs goes forward from his fences immediately. Jerry Calam is a bit more static and then goes. Yeah,
Galopin Des Champs gone back to going forward. When you watched him against Fast or Slow in the John Durkin, Fast or Slow was the one that was forward, and he made Galopin Des Champs look quite static, whereas then you watched it at Leopardstown, it was Galopin Des Champs that was making Jerry Calam look a bit static.
We can have a look at that in terms of the Race IQ graphics there, and which compares the John Durkin, which is the lower line, with the Savills Chase, Galopin Des Champs' jumping performance against the field.
Yeah, and the middle numbers, 1 to 17 across the middle. The under that is to par with the field, above it is to par with the field, and in the Savills even. And you watch Galopin Des Champs in the Savills, he was ahead of his rivals, whereas in the John Durkin, he was behind his rivals all the way. So yeah, he definitely jumped a lot better on the book. Now, that could be extra distance, going a fraction slower, softer ground, who knows? But he definitely jumped better in the Savills.
Yeah, and that spike right at the end is when he is going on powerfully to the line, as you've just described, slowing down, but not slowing down that much, and the rest of them are pretty much finishing legless.
They're spent. They're slowing down, whereas Galopin is maintaining it.
And I wanted to talk to you about where they all raced. because Galopin de Champs was quite wide throughout. He comes very wide into the straight. Also wide, Capodanno, seemingly one of his best performances ever. Appreciate It, you've already mentioned, ran well for a very long way, shaped pretty well, maybe for the Ryanair. And then you've got horses racing in the middle, like Jerry Colombe, and you've got one right down the inside, Conflated, who is so tired by the final fence, he can barely get over it. Yeah. Is there anything about the width of the track?
It could be, but obviously when you look at the result and you see Capodanno, Galopin de Champs, Appreciate, as you said, to the second last fence in particular, Appreciate and Galopin de Champs are going better. Over that distance, if the ones that are actually covering more ground are going the best, it would definitely make you think they raced on a better surface.
Yeah, I was sort of looking at the whole week. Factor File was down towards the inside. You might be able to mark that up. Flooring Porter and Corbett's Cross were down the inside. Maybe
Flooring Porter was always going to be, wasn't he? Going left.
Well, he would have to be. Maybe he ran better than it seems. And if you look at Meeting of the Waters handicap chase success, of the first 6 home who came home clear, I think it's the winner, the third and the fifth were all really wide. 2 of them were central, and there's only one horse that raced on the inside, and that's James de Burley, who ended up coming wide only in the straight, but finishing really tired. We'll find out in the Thyestes, won't we, about whether he was disadvantaged?
See how it goes. I'd say the second last fence missing probably mattered more to James de Burley. But look, no one's ever going to be able to prove it, but when you look at it, you think, maybe those that were wide did have an advantage.
Could be. We can have a look at what Martin Brassil thought about that handicap chase that I've just mentioned, because it factored into what he said about withdrawing fast or slow from the Savills chase. And also we lost Envoy Allen for the ground reasons. He heads to the Kinloch Bray. Janadil, however, was running a temperature. What do you make of what Martin Brassil had to say here about such a big field race being run on the Wednesday, making for ground that was not ideal on the Thursday for the feature chase, the Savills?
I suppose it depends on the year that's in it, doesn't it? If the rain had come Wednesday night instead of Tuesday night, it wouldn't be an issue. And then you're dealing with the weather. Leopardstown's a wide track. Galopin de Champs found a strip that was plenty good enough for him, and I could see what Martin is saying, but I don't know how you rectify it. It's been that way for a long time, but also the Paddy Power, they sponsor the whole day. It's not just the fact that, by the way, Savills, will you take that race, and Paddy Power, you take that race. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So I can see what Martin is saying, but I can't see it changing.
Yeah, and I suppose it was because of the extreme weather as well. I mean, that was a hell of a lot of rain.
And Leopardstown, I know there's 27 in the handicap chase, but Leopardstown's a big track. Plenty of width to it.
And Paul Townend found the width fully, and it seemed to reward him not just with Galopin de Champs, but also with Grange Clare West, which we will discuss next week. Now, A Plutar, the winner of the Cheltenham Gold Cup in 2022, the winner of the Betfair Chase so marvellously, and this was that day when he won the Gold Cup under Rachel Blackmore, a famous day. It sounds as though Richard Thompson from Cheveley Park Stud, the owners, they're thinking about whether to retire him. He was speaking on the Nick Luck Daily podcast earlier this week, and he felt that he didn't enjoy seeing A Plutar struggle out to his right over the fences in the Savills chase, and he didn't really want to see that again.
Struggle out to his right, and it used to be out to his left. Maybe he just needs to change direction.
I think he always went to his right, didn't he?
I thought he was left.
Anyway,
all his form is left-handed.
It is.
So he always went to his left. Now he's gone back to his right.
We'll agree to differ.
We'll agree to differ.
But do you think he hasn't shown a spark for a while now? I can understand why Richard Thompson was thinking that way.
Yeah, but he still has youth on his side, and I'm sure Henry Bromhead will try something and see if they can reignite the flame.
Okay, well, as I said, it's not definite just yet, but that's certainly under discussion, and he didn't appear in the Gold Cup entries, which we'll talk about in a few moments' time. New Year's Day, let's head to Tramore for the Savills chase there, which was won by Jungle Boogie. Oh, surely they got going far too far out, him and Classic Getaway.
Oh, they probably did. Darragh O'Keefe said he stalled out pretty early here on Jungle Boogie, jumped out and rocked on down to the first. Braun, Classic Getaway, Manila Crooner, Longhouse, Poet and Roy Mage in the blue colours at the back. And look, he pings the first. Now, Classic Getaway jumped really well. He was, you see Danny Mullins trying to stay behind Braun on the approach to the second, but he jumped by him pretty early. Longhouse Poet, who you imagine is going back to entry, made a fair mistake at the third, and Jungle Boogie himself made a mistake at the downhill fence, the fifth, here in front with Darragh O'Keefe. Hit it Didn't hit it too hard, but put down and bunny hopped it. Now, every time they climbed up the hill, they slowed it down considerably, but by the 10th fence, it had turned into a 2-horse race. Only the next time when they climbed from fences 13 to 14, Dara O'Keefe maintained 25 miles an hour, whereas he had dropped to 21, 22 on the previous 2 climbs up here. This time he kept that pace up, and when they turned then down to the 3rd last fence and they started to increase, both Jungle Boogie and Classic Getaway get from 27 miles an hour up to over 30 in the dip, 31 miles an hour on really testing ground by the time they get all the way down, and that does take its toll, because by the time Classic Getaway gets back up to fence 16, he's dropped from 31 miles an hour here to 29 as he starts to meet the climb. This looks all over for me. I think a Classic Getaway is going to go and win. Danny Mullins thought the same, goes by Jungle Boogie. You can't see him in a crooner in the shot yet, but from here to the next fence, Classic Getaway slows to 18 miles an hour, climbs over it, so does Jungle Boogie. When the crooner's coming flying from behind him, and another 50 yards, he's going to be a winner. So yeah, they went at it too soon, but Dara O'Keefe just about got it right.
It's good to see Jungle Boogie string 2 races together. He's joined Henry de Bromhead. We only saw him 3 times over a very long period of time for Willie Mullins. That's a tough race, though, for a horse that's got a fragile profile. Yeah,
it sure depends on how he is. I didn't hear any bad news, so we're assuming he's okay, but I can't imagine he'll want to run him in the next 3 weeks anyway.
He's entered in the Gold Cup and in the Ryanair. Classic Getaway only in the Ryanair. Obviously, they've got Allaho and Envoile and Cheveley Parkstead, so there are some reasons why maybe he might not turn up there.
Well, he'd had to prove he's good enough, but to me he didn't look like he wanted to go any further than he did at Tramore, which is 2 miles and 6.
Exactly. OK, let's have a look at the betting, and this is for the Boodles Cheltenham Gold Cup, and we thought it might be instructive to show you what Paddy Power's book looked like before Christmas and after Christmas, and the impact that all of these runs have had. Now, if you're arguing, and I think you're right, that Jerry Colombe was well below his best, then the push out to 9 to 1, and I think he was a little bit bigger in some places, may be a bit of an overreaction.
Yeah, I could definitely see him being placed in a Gold Cup. I don't think he ran his race. He's gone out to be the value, fast or slow, short and for standing in his stable, but I suppose Galloping the Champ franked his form. Shishkin's come right in from 20s to 8s, and Hewick 66s to 14. So a couple of market movers, a couple going the other way. Real Whacker, he doesn't look to have regained any of his old spark, and Long Press say we're going to see it Lingfield, I think.
That's right, the Fleur de Lis Chase. And they're also in the betting at 40 to 1 is Nassalam, who is the really impressive wide margin winner of the Welsh Grand National on the Wednesday. With a pair of blinkers and liking heavy ground. He's going to need that kind of ground to feature in the Gold Cup. Otherwise, he could, if he gets something like that, he could go Gold Cup and Grand National.
He could, and who knows? I mean, I didn't think we could have as much rain as we've had in December, but we have.
And there's more to come as well. There's more to come. Correct Rambler, by the way, the reigning Grand National winner, as I understand it, goes straight to Cheltenham.
Yeah, he went the same sort of route last year, didn't he?
Can't remember what he did prior to running in the Ultima.
He did. I thought he ran in the Coral Gold Cup. I think he came there pretty fresh after that.
OK. Let's have a look at the entries. We've had the entries for the non-novice Grade 1 races at Cheltenham this week, and there's some notable additions and some notable absences. But this is an interesting point. So obviously 2023 was an all-time low for all 3 races in terms of entries. You can see that with 27 in the Gold Cup, Champion Chase 14, Ryanair 27. But this year, the Gold Cup reached a new low of just 20 entries.
Yeah, I suppose, look, I don't know what the answer is, Lydia. It's been going that way, hasn't it, for a while? Peaks and troughs, maybe it'll come back up. Ryanair's man, or Champion Chase has got 5 more, and the Ryanair's got 5 more as well. So, yeah, look, it goes ups and downs. And I think when you look at the crop of novice chasers this year, you'd be hoping that there'd be a few more to add to next year's.
That's true. Individual horses across those 3 races, just 57. There are 14 doubly entered horses. And just to tell you about the Gold Cup, there's no Allaho. There is no Plutarch for the reasons we've just explained. There's no Noble Yates. But interesting, there is Nassalam and Stay Away Fay. The owners of Stay Away Fay have got their way, inverted commas. Or
sure, if you're not in, you can never win.
Absolutely.
And it's probably cheaper to put him in now than try and supplement him later.
Of course, they think that the new course will suit Stay Away Fay better than the old course for the brand advisory against novices. Right, let's have a think about the Ryanair long term through the prism of the horse that had been favourite, and that is Stage Star. He ran in handicap company on New Year's Day and he was pulled up, Ruby.
Yeah, he was taken on for the lead as well. I don't think that's the sum total of why he ran so disappointingly. Frero Bamboo went with him over the first, and Frero Bamboo got in control of the race by the time he got to the third fence. He's gotten in front of Harry Cobden. Now, I suppose Daystar, a little uncharacteristically, Lydia made a mistake here at the 11th fence. Harry gave him a squeeze, he put down, lost a couple of lengths, went to the next fence and kind of reached further, launched himself at it. Harry was sitting. They seem to be at 6s and 7s, which they haven't been in any of the other contests. They've been completely in sync. And by the time he gets down to the third last fence, he's well and truly beaten. Too bad to be true is how I would look at it. So, look, he surprised me winning the Turners last year. He was a good winner, the Paddy Power. I thought when I watched him in Newbury last year, he was disappointed in a Novice Chase. He left that behind him, and I wouldn't write him off in one run.
Yes, Paul Nicholls has said that he was a bit sore after this. He possibly pulled a muscle. He made mistakes early on and wasn't really going on the ground. There's lots of time between then and the Ryanair. That's why he was keen to run. Spring ground's going to be totally different. I didn't quite get the logic, really, of running in ground that you know isn't going to suit, but at least it's a long time prior to the Ryanair. I'm not saying that he won't get him back. I suspect he will. Well,
absolutely will, but I'd say he looked at it and just thought that could be a winnable race.
Yeah, I suspect it was too, because immediately after he won the Paddy Power Gold Cup, didn't he say straight to Cheltenham? And we thought, come on, this is Paul Nicholls. You know, you're going to have to tie him to the chair with gaffer tape to press the declare button, aren't you?
Entry button, Lydia, first.
Let's have a look at the Ryanair betting pre and post Christmas, shall we? So Stage Star was 3-1 second favourite. Was Allaho favourite pre-Christmas? I didn't think he was at 9-4. I didn't think he was.
That says he was.
Yeah, maybe he was. He was 7-2 in some books after the King George.
Yeah, well, I can only read it on the screen. That says 9-4 each
okay.
of two, or each both times.
I think that's a really bad price, Allaho, 9-4.
What price was Envoy Allen?
When you tipped him, 16s.
16s.
That's a good bet, really.
Can I tip 2 in the one race?
Can you what?
Can I tip 2 in the one race?
Yeah, of course you can. You can do whatever you like.
I think Appreciate is good value at 12s.
Yeah. I hear you on that.
I thought he ran really well in the Savills. I just don't think he stayed. And, yeah.
So how do you turn around the Turners form with Stage Star, etc., when Appreciated appeared not to stay?
I don't know if he not stay. I thought that both Appreciated, Mighty Potter, I thought Stage Star just controlled the race and they were all too far back.
Okay. Good argument. So is that a bet?
I'll stick it up as well, yeah.
Okay, great. I love this. So interestingly, in the Ryanair, no Brave Man's Game, no The Real Whacker. Is that a mistake for those two?
No, Real Whacker proved at the Paddy Power that trip was too short for him, and Brave Man's Game has looked like he wants even further, watching him lately, not shorter.
Okay. Editor Ajit is in this race, and Gary Moore could be pushed that way. He thinks he won the Clarence House last season through stamina. Fast or Slow, Ahoy Senor, Protectorat, also unusually doubly entered runners in the Ryanair.
Be surprised if Fast or Slow didn't run the Gold Cup. Protectorat, maybe.
Ahoy Senor that trip?
No,
I don't think so either. Right, okay, that's the stayers from Christmas. So we've done the stayers, let's move on to the 2 milers, shall we? And the Paddy's Rewards Club Chase at Leopardstown. And this was won by Dinoblue, getting her Grade 1 stripes. Yeah, and look, she's been progressive last season and this season. Gentleman to Me booked out. Complete change of tactics for Dysart Dynamo in the blue colours. He dropped in behind Captain Guinness and St. Roy was down the inside. Now, Captain Guinness and Dysart Dynamo took a little bit of time to switch off. Gentleman to Me did in front. Dinoblue was covering him, but look up past the winning post, they're both a little bit keen, but when they get around the bend to the second fence, they've settled well enough. I thought, anyway, looking at them from this grandstand, I thought Gentleman to Me was going a decent enough clip. Dinoblue was able to keep up with him, but I thought the signs were poor for Captain Guinness quite early. Puts down at this fence, doesn't put down, gets right in and takes all day to jump it, makes a mistake then at the 6th fence, and he was beaten that early. I don't think it was because he ran too free. I don't think he's turned up and ran a really poor race. Time to get to the second last fence, Gentleman to Me's out to his right. It was his first run of the season. He took a couple of runs last year. Mark Walsh and he went to pick him off, picks him off going to the last, and she gallops away to win well. Dysart Dynamo ended up falling at the last fence. He's at a bit of a crossroads in his career, but look, it was a good win for her. But I think she was primed for it. She'd had a run at Nace when she won. Gentleman to Me will have improved for that run, or he showed last year he was going to improve a fair bit. And I think she has to go again to get up to
the top ones, John Bon, El Fabiolo.
She just found her opponents beatable on the day, essentially.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Yeah. Captain Guinness was clinically abnormal, according to the vet afterwards. That's happened before, hasn't he? He's
Happened
had a
a
heart
bit
problem.
Tipperary, in a novice chase, and he bounced back from it, so hopefully he can bounce back from that too.
And I agree with you about Dynamo. He's got an entry in the Ryanair. I can't see that, but I just don't know what they're going to do. He resented being held up, didn't he?
Yeah, and he made it in the 4-3 and didn't get home either. He's just at a bit of a crossroads.
Yeah. And Samoa didn't seem to jump that well, and he's not entered in the Queen Mother Champion Chase, which we'll have a look at in a moment. This is what Sean Dunner would like to ask you, Ruby. She's been winning at 2 miles, looking like a real 2-miler, travelling strongly and attacking her jumps. And it's only when she's raced once over a long distance that she's been beaten. That was behind Brandy Love and Love Envoi in a novices mares race at Punchestown on her 3rd career start. Are you certain she's going to be stepped up in trip, asked Sean, for the mares chase, or could she stay at 2 miles and compete in the Queen Mother?
I'd say she could stay at 2 miles if something happened to El Fabiolo John Bon. But I'd say as long as the two of those go to the start, I would imagine she would run in the mares chase.
And the other factor, of course, John Bon, owned by JP McManus, Gentleman de Mee, owned by JP McManus, Dinoblue, owned by JP McManus.
And she has to improve to beat those. Look, we all want participants, but if you own them, you want to run the races you can win. And I'd be running her in the mares chase if she was mine.
And you think she'll stay?
I do. I think she's more relaxed really now. She raced too keenly as a novice hurdler. I think she's way more relaxed now.
And to those who say she couldn't win a Grand Annual off a mark of 140, I think it was 140, what do you say to them?
How much energy did she have left to find a leg at the last fence?
Yeah, absolutely walloped it. The last 2, I think it was.
Yeah, last was worse than the second last.
It was.
And she still had the energy to find the leg.
OK, let's have a look at the Desert Orchid at Kempton, shall we, on the 27th. And this was a limited handicap chase, as we've famously discussed during the course of this series, not just an open grade 2 anymore. It was won by Editor de Sheet, who won the race last year as an open grade 2. Yeah,
and look, he beats Elixir de Nuts and Nube Negra, and they probably would have been the same horses if it was still an open grade 2. They went a good gallop, Editor de Geet and Elixir de Nuts. They booked out and took each other on, and they had a good stretch on this field when they got to the 3rd fence. Boot Hill and Nube Negra were trying to follow them. Then they got to the 4th, the other two were caught up a little bit. When they got to the 8th fence, Boot Hill unfortunately tips over, stands too far back and trips, and then it gets into a bit of a scrap. Now they went hard, Editor de Geet and Elixir de Nuts, and Editor de Geet's that brave style of jump, and he tries his heart out. Second last, Elixir de Nuts even makes a mistake. Was that the difference in winning and losing? Can't have helped, but I don't think it was. And Editor de Geet saw it out really well. Nube Negra running on kind of surprised me. It's not something I've ever related to him before. And he comes shooting into the shot at the end, but good performance from the winner.
He's making up cheap lengths, isn't he, late? Because the other two are really tired, having
He
gone
is,
hard.
but I never saw him make up any links before. Usually he's either in control or falling out of shot.
Let's have a look at the pre- and post-Christmas Queen Mother Champion Chase betting. Of course, the El Fabiolo and John Bon binge-watched Die Hard over the Christmas period, whilst the others kind of got on with it. Anything there? Oh, Ferny Hollow, I should mention, is among the entries. The 19 entries. You just rolled your eyes. Ferny Hollow, annual Ferny Hollow's Alive yell. Yeah, he's in the entries for the Queen Mother. He's one of the 19. Also, the mares Dinoblue and Muscada are there. Sticking with the mares, let's move on to the mares chase run at Fairyhouse, which was won by Riviere de Tel, downing Allegorie de Vassy.
Yeah, and she came back to probably near her best, Riviere de Tel, to be fair to her. Honesty jumped out to roll along here. My design went with her. Riviere de Tel was down the inner, and Allegorie de Vassy dropped in at the back. Now, look, she's done it in the past, Allegorie de Vassy, but she does start jumping to her right quite early in this race. Kind of skied the first and got to the 3rd fence. She jumped markedly to her right. Honesty wasn't great at the second, and look, at really heavy ground New Year's Day, it can be tricky. Or Riviere de Tel launched at that one. It seemed to be happening. Maybe they were going too slow for them, and she goes to her right as well, Riviere de Tel. Now, the 3 that counted, Honesty, Riviere de Tel and Allegorie de Vassy, all got into the fray at the 4th last, where Riviere de Tel jumped to the front. The 3rd last, she's in control of the race, and the other two start to fade away. It was disappointing probably from Allegorie de Vassy. Honesty progressed all through last season, but Riviere de Tel back to her best, and I just think they're going to have to jump a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I'd be worried if I owned Dinoblue watching this. I don't think so.
Not at all. Riviere d'Etel, first win since December 2021, but she does stay. She does handle that ground, and she needs a right-handed track, which she got there. Allaho Rifasi found nil, didn't she?
Zero.
Again, absolutely zero.
Yeah.
I'd like to see her over 2 miles, if I'm honest. Just to see whether it's just finding nil or whether actually her stamina gauge is running out as well.
Time will tell. She won 2-6 in Limerick first time.
I know.
Hard to say it's stamina.
Let's have a look at the betting for the Mrs. Paddy Power. I suppose she's facing deeper. She's in deeper now, though, than she was then, isn't she?
Yeah, but look, I'd say the right filly is favourite.
Yeah. So Dinoblue at 7-4. Now, we should end this section by paying tribute to Zambella. Simon Munir and Isaac Sawaid have retired a couple of their warriors following Christmas, and one of them is this 8 times listed Mares' Chase winner Zambella, who was pulled up at the end of December when trying to win her 3rd Yorkshire Silver Vase. Anthony Bromley, who's the racing manager, said that we feel that she has done her bit, and they'll make a decision as to whether they'll have her covered or whether they might sell her. So goodbye to Zambella, and thanks for some excellent memories from her. Let's move on to analyse this.
So for Analyse this week, we're going to look at 3 incidents, 2 of them quite similar and 1 very different. Now, jockeys are human, just like footballers who miss time tackles, Formula 1 drivers who overshoot bends, and rugby players who still commit high tackles. They will all make mistakes. And in my opinion, Rachel Blackmore, Patrick Mullins and Brian Hughes made them in the last week. Now, we're going to start with Rachel Blackmore at Leopardstown on Folks Tiara with Pat Daru coming behind her. When you're in front, you have to ride the inside. She turns off the bend here, but she doesn't stay close enough to the railing. And what happens then is she invites Keith Donoghue to come on her inside. Now, you don't invite someone to a party who you don't want to be in attendance, so you never open the door. Rachel does. Now, she doesn't create much interference, and then Pat Daru ends up on the floor. Now, Pat Daru ends up on the floor because he himself jumps to the right and jumps into the side of Folks Tiara. Now, if you're coming to a surprise party, you don't ruin it by getting there early. Keith Donoghue went too soon as well, and he doesn't get far enough in then, he ends up getting a fall. Thankfully they were both okay. That moves on to Limerick, Danny Mullins and Patrick Mullins. Now again, Patrick rides too far off the bend here. If he doesn't want someone coming there, you don't leave the gap open. The running rail stops in a minute, and then Patrick rolls in a bit to keep Danny as tight as he can and rolls back out to jump the jump. Again, Danny went too soon to a surprise party. He's riding a 2 mile grade 1 winner against a 3 mile grade 1 winner. It's the next fence he should have been going on the inside. But if you watch Patrick Mullins on the head on, as he comes down here, he should be next to the rail. Then he makes a manoeuvre to his right, which he should do off the end of the rail, not to encourage anyone to come on his inside, and then drift back out to jump the fence. He does it right, only he started in the wrong place. And finally, we have Brian Hughes in Cheltenham on Brewing Up a Storm, Rachel Blackmore and Bob Olinger. Now watch when Brian Hughes changes his whip here from his right hand to his left hand. That's the time to go right hand down and get over here. He's in front of Rachel Blackmore. He can make the manoeuvre, but he does it too late. When he does decide to come over, Rachel Blackmore is already at the party. Can't close the door then, and she keeps going and gets herself in there. Now if you watch it on the head on, you can see how quickly Rachel was able to get over to the outside rail. So Brian could have done the same. You have to get there first. But if you're going to invite somebody, you can't close the door.
Okay, and obviously there was a lot of heat and light generated after the Faheen Chase, Gaelic warrior Patrick Mullins interview and what he said afterwards. And Ruby Walsh has already talked about it on RT, and I've talked about it on the Nick Daily podcast. If you want to talk about that, hear about that, that's where you go. Riding incidents. What I'm interested about here is, on the road, if I run into the back of the person in front, it's my fault. Whereas it seems to me that the stewards say it's actually the fault of the person in front. For example, Brian Hughes got 2 days. I know there was no action on the other 2, although Patrick's comments were referred to a higher authority. But it seems to be the other way round.
Yeah, and I don't know, is it really? You're definitely, as a rider, responsible for the heels in front of you. They are what will put you on the floor, so that's your own responsibility and looking after your own safety. As regards in front of you, I think Rachel was already too far up on Brian. Mm-hmm. So therefore, he has to be responsible for the one behind. So that's where when you have to be over link clear to make a manoeuvre. I'm assuming it's the same on the road. If you go across and take the bonnet off the car beside you, you're wrong.
fair enough. Right, let's move on to the 2 mile hurdlers, shall we? And we had the 2 biggies from this division racing over Christmas. Finally, Ruby, we saw Constitution Hill making his return in Kempton's Christmas hurdle.
Yeah, and I thought he was brilliant. Look, Rubo jumped out in front, lined up Nico in behind in the box. See, typical Constitution Hill, just flawless. Settles, jumps, quickens to his hurdles, saw Royale outside him, first street. It's just it's so easy for him. Jumps the third last hurdle, and I loved him from the home turn. Just in such a short space of time, this is just over. Quickens up, he's electric, and he's just so good to watch. It's like a horse that just lifts his front legs to jump. It's not like he has to make any effort. He just lifts his front legs a little bit higher in a gallop stride, and that's how he jumps. He's an incredible racehorse, and look, I enjoyed watching him. People say it's all too easy for him, but when you're that brilliant, it should be.
Well, we'll get back to that later, but this was flawless performance. It was great to see him. Obviously had been due to run in the Fighting Fifth, but when that was pushed back, Nicky Henderson decided to go straight for the Christmas hurdle. Now, finishing last of 5 there was So Royal, and I promise you, this is the last of the retirements that we're doing in this programme. So Royal, the 12-year-old, 3 times winner of the Grade 2 Elite Hurdle and the winner of the Grade 1 Henry VIII Novice Chase back in 2017, where he has been retired. He won 17 times in his career for Simon Munir and Isaac Suaid, and he heads off to be retrained as a show jumper. He's with the family in Exmoor, and we wish him well. I'm sure he'll leave a bit of a hole in the Alan King yard. I don't know how they'll get on with that, and they'll be so used to having him around the place. And us that love the sport as well probably feel the same way. Right, over to Leopardstown and the Matheson Hurdle. Unexpectedly, at least to me, Stateman and Impere Pass took each other on. I was thinking Impere Pass was going to go to the Railkill maybe on New Year's Day, but instead, head on.
Yeah, head on. And it turned into a good race. Fielded Ari, Jack Kennedy booked out in front of him. I went a really decent gallop, jumped the first well. Stateman sat second. Impere Pass, after running a bit keen at Ferryhouse, tucked in, and he was still a little bit keen. So was Echoes and Rain. Now Fielded Ari in front. If you're going to be a front runner, you have to jump a little bit better than that. He never quite jumped. Fourth hurdle, Echoes and Rain looks to make a worse mistake than Impere Pass there, but Fielded Ari going right put shape on this race. Now the third last hurdle, Impere Pass jumps up on the inside of Stateman, and Darrell doesn't want to get involved in that stage, so he sits and takes him back. But across to the second last hurdle, when Jack Kennedy goes right, Paul Townend jumps it, Fielded Ari or Impere Pass misses, but Paul's able to get in front of Jack. Darrell, and Darrell has to take back. Now he's in a pocket, but 2.5 furlongs of a home straight. He gets out in loads of time, and Echoes and Rain can't keep him in any longer, and he has a little go at Stateman, but he doesn't ever get that close to him. Stateman's really quick and slick at the last hurdle and pulls away and wins impressively. Now, I think the last 20-25 yards of this race suggests to me the Stateman is probably the better horse. He's definitely the better horse, because instead of getting closer, Impere Pass is actually getting a little bit further behind. But it was a really good performance from Stateman, and he shows he handles Leopardstown. He's a good, solid horse, and he's arguably as good, if not better, this year than he was last year.
We'll talk about that in a moment. I thought going into this, I expected Stateman to beat Impere Pass, but I thought or hoped that Impere Pass might run well enough for Connections to pursue the champion hurdle route nonetheless, and hope for experience from a second season hurdler during the course of the season. But this is what Willie Mullins said to Gary O'Brien in an interview afterwards.
I love the way Stateman galloped the whole way to the line. To me, that's improvement. He's improved from last year.
Speaking of improvement, can you ever envisage a situation where Impere Pass is able to get past him?
No.
Yeah, it didn't look like it today, in fairness. £6 the handicapper had between them, and it kind of worked, translated that way, didn't it?
Yeah. And I think even if Stateman goes out and trip Impere Pass, still struggle. Stateman is, he can go 3 miles if he wants, but he's good enough over 2. So it's going to be tough for Impere Pass.
Back here for the winner for the Dublin Racing Festival, I'm sure you'll have a think about it for the second?
Yeah, I'll have to have a word with Simon Munir, Isaac Suaid, and see what they want to do. That's it. Impere Pass has a pedigree that he can go up to 3 miles. He's in the top 2 in the British Isles, isn't he?
He definitely is.
Yeah, so anyway. No, I couldn't see him going chasing. No. Looking at Constitution Hill, he looks like he's improved as well. So we've more ground again to make up.
That pause and that no, it's pretty definitive, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what Willie thinks, and he's training them and looking at them every day of the week. But Impere Pass could improve, and Stateman has to improve, because he has to go and try and beat Constitution Hill.
But Imperial Pass could go up to 3 miles, so is it possible for the stayers?
Yeah, but he didn't race like a 3 miler to me in the Hatton's Grace.
No, I
Or
can't.
again there in the Matheson, he still races a little bit with the choke out, and that's not ideal in my mind for a 3 mile hurdler.
Yeah, I'd have to change everything I think about him to imagine him as a stayers hurdle candidate. Right, let's zero in on the big two then. State man, Willie Mellon's saying there that he thinks he's improved. Do you think he's improved?
I thought he had in the Morgiana, and I liked what I saw in the Matheson. But the one place where he hasn't improved is where he needs to get the Constitution Hell's level, is his jumping. And it's the speed of his jumping, I think. He just doesn't jump like Constitution Hill, and he probably never will.
Mm-hmm. Let's have a look at this in Race IQ numbers, first of all. So this is last season's champion hurdle.
And there was, in the whole race, there was a difference of 3.55 lengths to Constitution Hill over Stateman. Now, if you look at them this year and what they've done to the par of their opposition that they've raced against this year, Constitution Hill is still rock solid, and Stateman is not making the ground he should be making.
Yes, so we can have a look at the Christmas hurdle and the Matheson hurdle as well, and sort of see, first of all, there is the Christmas hurdle, so that's Constitution Hill versus the rest of the field. And
it's pretty decisive. I mean, he's the best horse, and he's getting an extra 5 and a bit lengths in the air.
He's a brilliant jumper, isn't he?
He is a brilliant jumper. And I didn't think Rubo jumped bad, but he's still losing to Constitution Hill. And then you go with Stateman in the Matheson hurdle to Imperial Pass, and I think this will surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, and there we are. And so that's what you're saying about Stateman. He doesn't gain at his hurdles, and he's up against a horse that A, might be better, and B, very much gains at his hurdles.
Yeah, and that's a disadvantage, and that's what's going to make it hard for Stateman.
Now, he heads next for the Irish Champion Hurdle. This is a plea from Matt Collins, formerly of this parish. Let's have a look, and this is to Nicky Henderson, and he's been thinking about the Christmas Hurdle. If you're beating horses rated £26 inferior, the opposition is little more than a racecourse gallop. Time to skip the gimmies and go to the Dublin Racing Festival and take on the Irish Champion Hurdle. Now, not only A, do I think that's not going to happen, Nicky Henderson has intimated on the Nick Luck Daily podcast that he might not even run the horse in the Bula/International, which has been moved to trial stage. So we could end up with a horse that, in the aftermath of last season's Champion Hurdle, was going to win the Cheltenham Gold Cup, the Ascot Gold Cup, the FA Cup final, and broke a world peace. And it's now actually going to end up running once prior to being back in the Champion Hurdle, potentially.
So if he does, he does. There's nothing much you or I can do about that. But I'd say now there's more chance of me riding Constitution Hill than there is of running him at the DRF.
Yeah, but let's hope that's wrong and that they do decide to run him again prior to Cheltenham. So this is how the Paddy Power markets looked before and after Christmas. And then there were two.
Yeah, then there was two, I suppose. There was the hope of three, but it's really two now, isn't it?
I think so. Let's move on to the stayers.
So lads, apparently I meant to be asking people at home to subscribe to the Paddy Power Racing YouTube channel.
I said Niall's a false start. Shut up! It's not a false start.
You've described this day as possibly your worst day ever.
Have you ever heard of Ruby Walsh?
Take some juice.
A John Wayne lookalike on him, more than likely at the same time.
Second horse isn't worth the mares.
This is expensive bars bar.
Yeah. A fence at Cheltenham where you go like that.
Yeah, go. That'd be an entry, yeah.
I cut your nuts off. What do you think had happened to you?
Now, while we're thinking about hurdling at Leopardstown over Christmas, there is one thing we need to remember, and this is particularly really for next week as well, when we're looking at the novices, and that's the change to the track during the
Tuesday, Wednesday. Well, first 2 days race wide towards the chase track, into the middle of the track, and then the last 2 days race right in. Huge change in ground. It's in onto much better ground on the inside.
OK, so bear that in mind. I mean, this is relevant to the Christmas hurdle, the Jack de Bromhead Christmas hurdle that we're seeing next, but also the novice hurdles that we'll be talking about next week. A bit of homework for you. Irish Point, then, won the Christmas hurdle.
Yeah, and bolted in, but it was a race that lacked the real front runner. Last year, Home by the Lee had Florian Porter to drag him along. This year, he had no pace in front of him, and he crawled. Entry speed, he's doing just over 26 miles an hour as he goes to the first hurdle. He loses nearly 2, but it gets slower instead of quicker for a real strong stayer like this fella. Down under 26 miles an hour by the time he gets to the second hurdle, and he loses another couple, and it stays slower, and he gets slower all the way down to 23 miles an hour at the second last hurdle with a circuit to go. Paul Townend can hardly keep Asterion Falange behind him, and away from the stands when Asterion Falange goes and joins him, he does push him up to 27 and it starts to build, but the first mile was running a crawl and that was never going to suit Home by the Lee. It did suit all the others, and you can see none more so than Irish Point, who's in fourth position, how relaxed he is. Even off a really slow pace, he just lobs along. Now pace was required then, Home by the Lee doesn't have any, Buddy One jumps through, Ballyadam even looked like having a chance for a second, but Irish Point pings the last for Jack Kennedy and strides away to win. Now he's won a Grade 1 3-mile hurdle. Can you stay? He absolute glutton to stay? You can't, because the first mile was running the crawl, but he was really impressive. He's a really good horse. He's going the right direction, and the owner has a clatter of staying hurdle candidates.
An embarrassment of riches. He comes up later in the show. The positive for him, I take the point, it was a total dawdle, hasn't proved his stamina for 3 miles, but the fact he settled in the dawdle, he's going to give himself every chance. Every chance,
and that has always been a plus point for Irish Point. He's a lovely, relaxed individual, even in the ring, how settled he was. Yeah, he's a lovely horse.
And with Home by the Lee, nobody wanted to help JJ Slevin, did they?
But that's...
What are they going to do next time? Put some blinkers on? Is he going to take a lead? What's he?
I don't even think the blinkers will work. I think he's just not a front runner. Some horses are leaders, some horses are followers, and Home by the Lee is definitely a follower.
OK, and we should just mention that Buddy One scoped wrong afterwards, according to his trainer Paul Gilligan, after he was pulled up. There was, of course, pre-Christmas in Britain, our Grade 1 Stayers Hurdle, and that was won by a new kid as well, in Crambo, in a glorious tussle with Paisley Park from the final hurdle.
Yeah, it was a ding-dong. I thought Paisley Park had come to do enough as they got to the last hurdle when he chinned or got by Dashel Drasher. Johnny Burke came outside them on Crambo, and it flip-flopped. And where it counted, Crambo was in front. Good performance. I didn't see it coming. He got well beaten in the handicap. Well, I suppose he was unlucky, but I didn't think he could be unlucky in a Grade 1 horse in the handicap.
Yeah. He seemed to get going a little bit too late. Johnny Burke here was taking over and got this Grade 1 winner second for Fergal O'Brien. A young horse, he's beaten the old guard, Paisley Park, Dashel Drasher, Champ, who was a bit disappointing, a bit lethargic. But going into Christmas, we were all thinking, OK, this is an old division, you know, old guard. Side Burley we haven't even seen. And now, suddenly, there are players for this division left, right and centre, everywhere. Well, Crambo, Irish Point.
Yeah, you always had Chupa, though. He was there since Fairyhouse and ran really well in the race last year. But he did get beaten in the race last year. Now he's a year older this year, that might help him. But yeah, you have Irish Point, maybe Sir Gerhard, Crambo. But the Stayers Hurdle does that, doesn't it?
It does.
Just throws up new ones there every so often.
It's good, though. You mentioned Sir Gerhard. Let's take a look at him, shall we, and what he did on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, he dropped back to a 2.5-mile hurdle race. Vanilia went along in front of Aspire Tower. Sir Gerhard and Devil's Coachman sat just behind him. Jeff Kidder, Ashdale Bob and Andy Dufresne. Now, both Sir Gerhard and Devil's Coachman early in the race jumped a bit like they'd been running over fences, but they both improved as the race went on. Sir Gerhard probably quicker than the Devil's Coachman did. Ashdale Bob was coming off the back of a long layoff, and he made a costly error here at the third last hurdle, which slightly put him on the back foot. But Sir Gerhard was swinging when they got to the second last hurdle. It was up on the outside of Vanilia and Aspire Tower. The Devil's Coachman was trying to get involved in behind, but again, he was just a little bit high there. And Sir Gerhard does quicken off the bend. You think, yeah, he's going to go and win. I thought Ashdale Bob was going to be the danger. Now, he just about gets there at the last hurdle, and you can see maybe why he wasn't an out-and-out chaser, because this jump doesn't look to be massive, yet with the effort he makes, he barely gets there. And he does gallop out well to win. Will he get 3 miles in the Stayers Hurdle? Only time will tell, but he's going in the right direction anyway.
Paul Tannen said afterwards he's more tractable than he was in his younger days, so that is going to help him. He hasn't yet proved his stamina for 3 miles, though, has he?
No, he hasn't proved it. And he's beaten the Devil's Coachman and Ashdale Bob, who probably needed the run. And
made his statutory error. It's obligatory, it's in his contract. He has to make 1 per race. Let's have a look at Jamie Bircham and what he had to say about Sir Gerhard. He really enjoyed the return of Sir Gerhard. He's right to say he's got an entry in the Ryanair. We assume he'll be entered in the Stayers next week. What do you think?
I'd say Stayers Hurdle.
Yeah, his jumping, I'm glad he's got his confidence back, because he took another fall. He looks like he doesn't really have the confidence for fences to me.
Yeah, or the power.
Let's have a look at the betting anti-post for the Paddy Power Stayers Hurdle. Again, pre and post-Christmas. Well, strictly, it is pre-December the 23rd and post-New Year's Day, but here we go. And we've got Telem, who we haven't yet seen, potentially the French raider. Imperi Pass is in there, which he wasn't before, not to that degree anyway. Irish Point steps forward. Crambo is there. They're coming from left, right and centre. And down the bottom there, Bob Olinger as well. Now, what connects Bob Olinger, Irish Point and Chupu? Well, it's Rob Corr, owner Brian Aitchison, and this is what he had to say following Bob Olinger's success, which we'll be analysing in a moment. And thank you very much to Adam Morgan from the Press Association for these quotes. And he was basically saying, if you had 3 horses, would you run all 3 of them in the Stayers Hurdle?
Yeah.
You would say yes.
Well, he needs your 3 chances of winning.
He wants to run Bob Olinger over 2.5 miles at Aintree, save him for that.
Still have to take, yeah, well, depends what Constitution Hill does, doesn't it?
I can't see Constitution Hill going back to Aintree. He was the least impressive over 2.5 miles. Surely he goes to Punchestown.
I would be hoping he'd go to Punchestown, but he still won.
He did. So let's have a look at the return of Bob Olinger in the Relkill. Faced just the 3 runners. I was not a believer after the Lismullen Hurdle.
Yeah, he had a bit to improve. Strong leader booked out. Bruno Pastorm sat second. Maria's Rock was sat in third, and Rachel Blackmore dropped in at the back. And not a whole pile happened in this race for much of the contest. They seemed to go a decent enough gallop. Strong leader probably was only jumping okay, but everybody was happy enough. James Bone was always... He was obviously impressed with Bob Olinger because he had a couple of looks for Rachel Blackmore to make sure how far behind them, wondering where she was. But look, down to the second last, Bruno Pastorm ranges up, Maria's Rock goes inside, Bob Olinger comes outside. But you'd have to love the turn of foot that he showed. And look, he was a really good novice hurdler. He is a Cheltenham Festival Grade 1 winning novice chaser, albeit that he was very lucky. He doesn't say that on the check, it just says he's the winner. And you'd have to bustle his way through, and the way he goes from the last to the line. I love the speed that he maintained and the way he got to the line. It was as good a performance as the horses had in quite a while.
Head carriage and lugging left?
Has always been the same, hasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, he still goes powerfully forward, doesn't he?
He does. That's just normal for him, isn't it? And the mare ran okay. Definitely ran better than she ran in Newbury, but not quite to the heights maybe she was scaling last year.
Yeah, she settled better, which was a positive for her. I don't think she likes soft ground. She's better on top of the ground, and she would have wanted more cover than that. But yeah, you're right. She hasn't yet retained, say, the run in the second in the Liverpool Hurdle yet.
No, not yet anyway. Yeah. Maybe she will.
Let's have a look at what you've got to say about this. Dubai Ace has been talking about Bob Olinger, and he thinks that he should go for the Stayers Hurdle. John's pointed out that Brian Aitchison said he's not going there. And I like this from Dubai Ace. Things change. Life is mutable. Things can change, can't they? You have to back your view.
Yeah.
Let's move on to what Course Specialist thinks. He's got an excellent Cheltenham record. He thinks that Bob Olinger is rejuvenated. And he's got sound credentials against ageing horses and younger horses with something to prove. I'm not sure so much that the younger ones have got that much to prove these days. Certainly Crambo, less than many. Go on.
No, I don't know. Like Chupu and Irish Point, have they got a whole pile to prove?
Irish Point's got to prove he stays, that's all. But yeah. I don't think he's got much to prove either.
And Chupu, I suppose, did Impere pass Frankie's form or dent the form of Ferios? You'd have to say he franked him because... Chupu's is out and out stayer, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Right, this weekend we have some mares in action. There is the Unibet listed mares hurdle at Sandown on Saturday over 2.5 miles. And You Wear It Well is there up against Nurse Susan, who was a recent winner of a handicap at Cheltenham. And we'll be chatting about that next week. But that is the latest missive in the mares during the course of this season, having seen Mary's Rock. And we will now see You Wear It Well, last seen when third in the Fighting Fifth. We end in a moment by just giving a little bit teaser of what we're expecting next week and some horses that we don't expect to be talking about. So it's next week for the novice chasers, next week for the novice hurdlers. One of the races we'll be discussing is the one at Naas on Sunday, the Grade 1 over 2.5 miles, the Lawlers of Naas. Particularly looking forward to seeing Firefox, who beat Ballyburn at Fairyhouse. Elat Lean-Teak going to be the Willie Mullins representative.
Chapeau de Seal will run as well. Mystical Power, possibly reading Tommy Wrong and Lecky Watson. Looking at all those, I'd say maybe the only one that mightn't is Facile Mode because he ran at Leopardstown, but I could see most of it on Tubber runs. It's a really good novice hurdle.
Mr. Policeman in the novice chase as well, we'll see him?
Yeah, has to improve a little bit. He should have come forward. It's a really slowly run race he won, and he should have come forward.
Now, I mentioned there were 2 horses that we won't be talking about next week. It's actually 3 that are out for the season, or pretty much for the season, unfortunately. Classical Dream is one of them, sadly.
Yeah, he's fragile, isn't he? And unfortunately he's out, but Willie's missing another one as well.
Yes, Indiana Dream is the other one. Frank Berry, the racing manager, JP McManus, says he's got a leg. Now, for people at home, what does that mean?
He's forward him, but he's one of them injured. Tendon injury is what racing people would commonly term as a leg.
Yeah. So he is out for the season. And unfortunately, Henry de Bromhead's In the Pocket, also owned by JP McManus. He is out probably for the season. He might make Punchestown or something like that. He pulled some muscles behind when doing some work in preparation, having been supplemented for the Racing Post Novice Chase. Oh, what a sickener.
That is a sickener, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
So really sorry to hear that for all connections, and we wish those horses well. That's the end for this week. Make sure that you join us next time around. In the meantime, there is the website address for my column. There's not one, not two, but three of them there. Ruby, thank you for your contribution.
Just about be finished by this time next week.
Maybe. Goodbye.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.